let's talk MK. Now, MK has been making a splash. I think that they're going to get a majority vote in my region. I do think that they'll be the governing party in the area that I live in, and I've seen a lot of support for them. I've spoken to a lot of people that support them. I don't particularly support them, but I'm still going to be impartial in this little bit of an analysis. Now, let's jump into it. Okay, so let's start with some of MK's policies. So the first thing that I put down is conscription. So MK has this policy of conscription where they believe that every person over the age of 18 should serve in the South African army in order to foster a sense of patriotism and nationalism. Well, most of us are not that keen on that. Then they focus on nationalization. I 100% support nationalization, and through nationalization, we can reclaim resources that are now in the hands of the white monopoly. Then they want to recenter culture. A lot of the MK manifesto focuses on culture and on focusing on bringing culture back into schools as well as into South African society, structuring the social security system around the cultural security system, and ensuring that African culture has a place in South African society, because that is what South African society is about. And then they cite land reform policies in Asian countries and speak about successful land reform policies such as in Singapore. And then they speak about expropriation of all land. Now, the reason I put this with the question mark is because they speak about the state owning all of the land and basically giving people the right to work on this land and to tend to the land. Whereas the EFF's policy is more the white farmers will keep 60% of their land and 40% of the land will be taken back and used for the benefit of the public. Then they speak about scrapping the constitution. This is something I don't really understand how they aim on doing it or why they aim on doing it. I guess it's because of how unequal the constitution makes us, essentially making us all equal and not addressing the issues of the past. Then they speak about lower and upper houses of parliament, including traditional leaders. And this could serve to be quite beneficial, but also quite problematic if traditional leaders are not well equipped to run political affairs of the country, because it could conflate traditional laws and traditional leadership with traditional leadership. Then they speak about the issues that the South African public faces. This is incredibly important and shows exactly why apartheid was so bad and what inequalities it left us with. For example, we have a 42% black unemployment rate and a 7% white unemployment rate from the entirety of both populations. 64% of black people live below the poverty line and 1% of white people live below the poverty line. And then something that is not mentioned here is that 70% of the land is owned by white people, as opposed to the minority that is owned by people of color, and then 70% of businesses are owned by white people. Then they speak about beneficiation of resources, basically making resources more beneficial to the South African public and making us a part of the process of manufacturing and generating these resources. Then they speak about the model that they would like the economic strategies to be based on in non-Western countries, for example, Singapore's. Then they speak about enhancing BEE to include black control, not just involvement, because right now what BEE really is about black people having a majority shareholder, the minority shareholder value in certain businesses, as opposed to actually reclaiming the wealth that was stolen during apartheid. Then they speak about education. They want a free education from kindergarten until postgraduate education, which will be amazing for a lot of people, so that your education can be completely free and of a great standard. Then they speak about their 5-year plan on infrastructure and how they want to rebuild infrastructure as well as build more infrastructure. And they speak about making PhDs a paid full-time program. Then we move on to healthcare. The MK party is a big supporter of the NHI, which is something that the DA is not a fan of. Then they speak about a state pharmaceutical company in order to eliminate the possibility of big pharma and people being overcharged for medication that they need as well as for healthcare. And this will eliminate the cost of unnecessary medications as well, medication and treatment. Then we speak about social security and housing. They want the minimum wage to be 4,500 rand. Any minimum wage is something that should not be negotiated. Minimum wage is currently below livable wage. Then we speak about shelters. And so essentially, instead of building houses, what they're thinking of doing is building shelters where people can live in, something that is comfortable, something that caters to all of their needs, as well as something that is a safe haven for many people and has proper security. I think this is a great measure in order to eliminate homelessness. Continuing, they speak about how the ANC has built 3.4 million homes since 1994, which is a positive on their side in terms of complementing the ANC. And then they speak about how 1.4 million people are still living in shacks and how this needs to be tackled. Then they speak about PRASA, which is the railroad network in South Africa, and how that they aim to revitalize it and connect it to rural areas so that we have a functioning railroad the passenger transport system. Then they speak about high-speed rail transport, for example, between Johannesburg and Durban, having something like the Gautrain between all of the different provinces, which will be amazing again. Then they speak about safety. They speak about 1 policeman per 242 citizens, and then there's and this is a very low number to have, especially in a country where the crime is so rife. And how they want to increase the police force. And then they speak about the very stark difference between themselves and the EFF. They don't mention this, but they do mention that they want to crack down on illegal immigration, and they believe it is its search to infrastructure, healthcare, and education, whereas the EFF does promote open borders. And they then said that they stand with Russia, Cuba, and Palestine against Western imperialism and against and they are on their side in the fights that they are fighting, and that they would like to withdraw from the ICC because they do not believe that the ICC is a proper court of justice. Now, just to discuss the MK's manifesto and the fact that MK is a very new party, and we don't really know what to expect from them. They are being led by Jacob Zuma, who will not be allowed to be a member of parliament according to what the court has ruled thus far, and they have already had leadership struggles within the MK. Now, what will this translate to for the party in the long term? We don't really know. The party has had a stronghold in places such as KZN, but we aren't really sure about what the execution of the party is going to be like, nor what the actual long-term aims are, despite the manifesto, because from the interviews that I've watched and what I've seen, the party doesn't seem to have much direction in terms of what they want to do, except revitalizing African culture. I think that's a great goal, but I also don't fully support them because they've proven to be quite messy and chaotic as far as I've seen, and I've tried to be as impartial as possible. I like that they tackle the land issue. I like that they tackle certain aspects that really need to be spoken about. But the two things that I'm not a fan of is, number one, the conscription. I do not think that that's necessary in South Africa. I don't think everyone has aptitude for it, and I don't think that it should be a country where military service is a necessity. The second thing that is an issue, and this was from a speech that Jacob Zuma said, as opposed to something that's in their manifesto, is that Jacob Zuma did speak about the fact that their manifesto mentions lowering the teen pregnancy rate. But with that, they said that they would like to take these young girls to Robben Island as well as young children in order to curb this epidemic. I would not exactly say that is the best method of curbing the teen pregnancy pandemic. So all in all, the MK is a very new party. I do think that they will come out with their guns blazing. I do think that they will have some place in parliament. I'm just not sure that they're the right fit. I also have quite a few qualms with it, considering Jacob Zuma's past and his term in office, and I would not want to essentially relive that without any improvements from it. Yes, the cost of living was lower, but there was also a different time, really. And the cost of living has increased everywhere around the world. So I think it's ultimately for you to decide, are they good, are they bad? They've had a lot of publicity. They've made a splash. Some of it was positive, some of it was negative, but we do know that all publicity is good publicity, so let's see how it goes.